and welcome to the latest episode of Voices in Leadership, the Leading Age Virginia podcast. I am Melissa Andrews, President and CEO of Leading Age Virginia and host of this podcast. And I am just delighted to have two of my colleagues on our show today, Dana Parsons, who is our longest tenured staff member of Leading Age Virginia, and Tracey Lewis, who is our brand new, so least tenured, is that, I guess how it should say, staff member of Leading Age Virginia. Dana and Tracey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So I guess, Dana, because you're most seasoned, we'll start with you. If you would tell our listeners like a little bit or a lot about you and how you got into aging services.
Okay. Well, thanks, Melissa. My educational background is a combination of law and public policy. And so when I finished law school and was trying to figure out next steps for my career, I had this great opportunity to work at the Department of Social Services. And this is an agency, as you know, that regulates both adult day and assisted living, as well as some other programs. And so it was really there that I learned the process, for impacting regulatory and policy processes. So I was trying to figure things out and saw this great opportunity to work at this association that works with aging services. So I seized that opportunity, and 20 years later, I am still here and enjoying it.
I'm going to circle back in a minute, but first, Tracey, tell us about how you got pulled into aging services.
Yeah, so I really love this question because I think it's so interesting to hear all the different paths that people, take to come into aging services, because it's really, really diverse. There's not just kind of one path that people can take. So for me, I actually originally wanted to be an occupational therapist for many years during my undergrad, and I worked at a inpatient physical rehab hospital in their occupational therapy department, helping with treatments and things. And I really enjoyed it. But when I started thinking more about the longevity of that and if I would really want to do that as a full-time career, I came to the realization that that probably wasn't the best path for me. But I did realize that the people that I enjoyed working with the most were our older patients. I connected with them the most and just really felt like that was where I wanted to be. So I talked to my supervisor at the time, and she had mentioned gerontology to me. And this was the first time I'd ever heard of it. And, I was like, oh, what's that? Like, what do gerontologists do? And she explained it kind of more around like the medical route that people take with it. But so I decided to do some of my own research and found the Virginia Commonwealth University Master of Gerontology program. And from that, I had a conversation with Jen Pryor, who works there, and the conversation just went really well with her, and I just felt like that was kind of where I belonged. So immediately applied, and a few months later, moved from Tennessee to Richmond. And I was here for about a year, and I worked in an assisted living community to get my residency in Virginia before starting school. And then I started the gerontology program in the fall of 2021, and graduated this past May. And through the program is how I found Leading Age Virginia and you guys, and started, interning with you summer of last year. And it was just such a great experience, and we just worked really well together. So decided to come on full time.
And we're glad you did. Dana, what drew you to public policy work?
I think what drew me to public policy work was trying to just really understand how it all fit together. And I didn't really know at the time when I was studying it how important it would become in the work that I do in aging services. It is so all-encompassing of so many different areas, law, regulation, and policy. Public policy is not just about policy. It's about impacting those other areas. So I think that's what really drew me to it initially.
When you started law school, did you know that's where you wanted to be, or what did you think your trajectory would be when you started law school?
I did not know. When I started law school, I guess I thought I was going to do a traditional route. But along the way, I just had some opportunities to be exposed to different things. And the combination of law and policy, when I saw this opportunity at Leading Age Virginia, just seemed to be a natural fit. So I'm very thankful for all that led me here.
Tracey, when you started, or at least when we met you in DC at the Leading Age Leadership Summit during the student program, I remember asking you where you thought you wanted to be when you were finished your master's program. And at the time, you weren't sure. You had some ideas because you knew what you really cared about, but you weren't exactly sure what like the job would be. So tell us a little bit about at the time what you were working on, what you cared about the most, and kind of how you ended up with us, like kind of what you were exposed to through your internship and what intrigued you enough to want to come and work at the association and specifically to work with Dana.
Yeah, so at the time that I met you guys, yeah, I really didn't have a clear idea of what a career would look like for me. I knew what area I wanted to be in and I knew the impact I wanted to make, but not sure how that translated to a career. So at this time, and then still to this day, one of the areas that interest me the most is trauma-informed care. And I was really passionate about it. And I was doing an advocacy assignment or project for one of my classes about trauma-informed care and more the kind of policy regulation side of it. And so that was kind of where I was. And then through working with Dana in my internship, we really focused on advocacy and I was working with her at the General Assembly and really exposed to that really like legislative part of aging services and how it, impacts the day-to-day of the work that we do. And so that really kind of broadened my horizons. I'm still very, very passionate about trauma-informed care, but I can take what I learned and apply it to other areas as well.
Dana, when you think about the work you do on the state level with regards to advocacy, how does that compare to your experience on the federal level? So, the General Assembly time versus, when we do Capitol Hill visits in DC, once or twice a year. Well, how would you compare those two experiences? And can you like kind of paint the picture for our listener of what it's like, a day in the life of a lobbyist at the General Assembly versus what you do on the Hill?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's when I talk with people about advocacy, I always preface how different state and federal advocacy is. And so when I compare the two, the state advocacy is so much about relationship building. It's about being at the General Assembly, but it's really about being with these legislators and being with state regulators all year long and working with them and educating them and helping them to experience the issues that we're talking with them about. So at Leading Age Virginia, we encourage our members to become advocacy champions so that they can invite out their legislators to see communities and to see the different types of services and levels of care. When it comes to advocating on a federal level, of course, we have Leading Age National that's there all the time, but the difference is that it's going to an office and talking with an aide for a representative of Congress and educating them about an issue, and then hopefully staying connected with them continually. But it's not the relationship building. Our association in Washington really works on that relationship building, but when it comes to being here in Virginia, the real difference is it's working all year long on an issue. When it comes to a federal level, it's more about having that one time at the office of a particular member of Congress, then sending them letters and following up, but it's not so much as the face-to-face relationship building.
Yeah, the thing that astounded me, because I did the reverse, right? I was at Leading Age National for 14 years, before coming to Leading Age Virginia 7 years ago. And the thing that I was most struck by was that, we've been talking about survey and certification reform for 20 years at the federal level. I mean, we at National convened a task force and wrote a white paper, Broken and Beyond Repair, about the survey and cert. And so what's changed? We convened a blue ribbon cabinet, as Larry Minix would call it, around financing long-term services and supports. I was one of the ambassadors. That was back when, President Obama was in office. We still haven't figured out how to finance long-term services and supports. We talked about, so all of these issues at the federal level that we're still, struggling to change. And then I come to the state, and during a short session, there's 3,000 bills introduced, and things are moving like rapid fire. It's like somebody sneezes and all of a sudden there's legislation introduced, and it's either killed or it's passed or it becomes a study. And it's just amazing to me, not necessarily how much progress is made at the state level, but just the volume of bills and movement that happens at the state level. That was what really astounded me when I came to Virginia versus being at the national office.
And to add to that, you're right. We have over 3,000 bills in a session. We narrow that down, and in many cases, when a bill's passed, then the work starts. You've got to develop regulations. That takes a very long time. There's stakeholder input. Once the regulations pass, then different organizations have to develop their policies to reflect those regulations. And so it's really an all-year process, whereas on a federal level, there's one issue, and year after year after year, we're continuing to work on it.
But DNA lockout, the 3-day stay waiver. I mean, we could go down the list, right? Immigration reform, just on and on and on. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm going to ask you both the same question in a second, but just looking ahead to November, in Virginia, this is something I don't know that any other state has seen, that we're about to see in November, with potentially a huge turnover in our General Assembly because everybody's up for re-election, right? So, Dana, in your 20 years of doing this work, have you ever seen this potential for turnover?
I have not.
See, and what does that mean for our work?
Yeah, I actually have not. What it means for our work is that we have lots of education to provide. So Tracey and I are working together. We've identified the candidates in every district, shared that information with their members, asking them to invite the candidates out to educate them, because session is a very busy time, and that's not when you want the education to occur. So we're trying to be very proactive and take this opportunity to educate both candidates, because maybe the person who doesn't win this year might win down the road. So it's a win-win. So it's a lot of education for those that aren't new to the session, to the General Assembly that we've worked with for many years. We continue to maintain those relationships and raise new issues with that person. Not as much education is needed, but with the new members, we have a lot of work ahead of us.
So Tracey, why do you think advocacy is important to our field?
So, there's a lot of reasons, but the ones that really stick out to me the most is that, in aging services and older adults in particular, they're a underrepresented population, in our society. And honestly, unfortunately, a forgotten population. We think about, when people get old and we just kind of forget, but they're still living, just like the rest of us, and their lives still have just as much value, but those services and supports and things just aren't there for them. And for them and for us and our kids and our future, we really need to advocate to create better opportunities, create more awareness, disrupt ageism, all of these things. And I think like those are the reasons advocacy really speaks to me.
Dana, I think people have a misconception of what it means when we talk about going on Capitol Hill or meeting with legislators. Could you kind of break it down? Because I think people, they get nervous. Oh my gosh, do you want me to go and talk to an elected official? It seems intimidating, but it really isn't. So could you kind of break it down? Like if I was coming with you for my very first meeting with a legislator, what should I expect?
I think you should expect that you're the expert. It's not intimidating.
They should be intimidated.
Absolutely. It's very informal. It's an opportunity for a one-on-one conversation with the legislator, and it's our opportunity to inform them about the issues. I think that there is a misconception that it is very intimidating. But it's a lot of hustle and bustle at the General Assembly, a lot of people running around. You can get into an office with a legislator, what's the issue? They want to learn, they want to understand it, and we want to talk to them about how we can work with them to do it.
And it's not like you're talking in technical language. I mean, you're really just telling your story. You're telling the story of, your grandparent, your relative, a resident. You're telling the story of your community, right? I mean, that's really what it boils down to, Tracey, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so to kind of piggyback off of what Dana was saying, so this year was my first year, meeting our legislators and going to Capitol Hill. And I definitely went through that. I was very intimidated, and I was like, oh my goodness, what, trying to prepare as best I can. And it was, much more relaxed. Like these representatives that we were meeting and their staff, they just wanted to sit down and have our conversation. They just wanted to hear the stories and understand, why we're there and what we're saying. And it wasn't like we had to come with all of these like resources and education and things. It was more like they just wanted to hear from us. And it wasn't intimidating, and it was actually really nice.
Yeah, especially if you're wearing comfortable shoes and you remember your water bottles and your protein bars.
Yes.
It's a long, long day. So when you think about the future of aging services, what concerns you? What might potentially keep you up at night when you think about the future of our field and the work that our members do?
I think for me, it's that it's not being kind of accepted. It's not being understood. We've come a long way, but there's a long way to go, and it's not a small thing. It's changing our society and culture's entire perception on aging services and what it is and what we do. And that's not an easy ask. And so it's this amazing goal that we have, but it seems sometimes unattainable. Like how do we do that? How do you change an entire culture's perception of something?
What about you, Dana?
I think one of the things that concerns me the most, having been in this field for 20 years, is how fragmented our continuum is. So we live in a state where each level of care is regulated in a different way. And maybe that's necessary and maybe it's not. It is what it is. And they are regulated differently and by different agencies. And so what concerns me is that we want it to be presented as a continuum. We want Virginia to be perceived as a state where we want to retire and that it's a state to age well in. But when you walk into a fragmented system, it's hard to know where to start. And so I want to bring solutions to the table where it can be connected in a way that can be navigated.
Let me ask the flip side of that question is, what excites you when you think about the future of aging services?
Well, what excites me is that I think that there's so many possibilities. When you look at this fragmented system, there's so many possibilities that are positive, that ways that we can raise awareness and connect this continuum so that when people look at aging services, they're not just thinking about nursing homes, assisted living, adult day. These are realistically different levels of care, but they look at it as a continuum. And then, what are the possibilities there to bring about positive change?
How about
Yeah.
you, Tracy? What's exciting you?
I mean, so much. So, I just came out of school, and so there are many aspects that do excite me and that, that keep me going. But I think one thing is that, I'm starting to notice that other people notice. The other people notice the issues that older adults face, that we in aging services face, and they're paying more notice, and they're asking questions, and there's more, I think, buy-in from the community. I know I was recently talking to Dr. Tracey Gendron from VCU Gerontology, and she mentioned that they have a really high enrollment this fall. I think one of their highest ever for incoming new students. And so that's what excites me, is that more people are coming in. There's a lot of work to do, but we're getting more people to do that work.
Yeah. So why should people think about working in aging services?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, so we're all aging, right? So from the time we're born to the time we die, every person is aging. We're getting older. We're growing older. And so sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here.
Okay.
Where was I?
Why people should think about working in aging services.
Right. That's okay. That's where we were.
Yeah.
So it's and it's because we're all aging. That's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
We're all going to get old, and so it's at some point going to affect us all. And if you don't know what you don't know, you're unprepared for the future. And so I think this is a way to help be better prepared for ourselves and for our loved ones, and just as a society, just change that perception on what it means to grow old, to be old.
Yeah. Dana, what about you?
Well, I think that people should work in aging services because of the opportunities that are available. When I used to think about aging services, I just automatically thought about nursing services, direct care. And for as long as I can remember, that's exactly what I would think of. Since I've been in this field, I have learned about the many opportunities that people can take advantage of in working in aging services. There are so many different fields: human resources, finance, social services, marketing, dining. There's just so much. So I think there's such a great opportunity to have a positive impact on aging services. And although nursing is a tremendous, wonderful opportunity for a lot of people to go into, it's not for everyone. And aging services just isn't about nursing care.
That's right. So how do you continue to stay energized and upbeat? I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, Dana, you and I have worked together for a while now, and that's one of the things that even though every year you lament, God, the General Assembly, the General Assembly is starting. The General Assembly is starting. I mean, everybody does. Everybody in your position, no matter who they are, laments. And it cracks me up because y'all complain, but y'all are fueled by it, and you wouldn't do any other job, I don't think. And then you're always smiling, even when you're complaining. That's one of the things I admire about you. So how do you keep energized and upbeat despite the fact that, we potentially could have 100% turnover in the General Assembly, despite the fact that we could have, federally mandated nursing home staffing ratios come down, despite the fact that adult days aren't reimbursed where they need to, despite the fact. So how do you maintain your upbeat, optimistic outlook?
Well, I appreciate that, Melissa. I think that it's because advocacy is not going away. Even
Those
though
are guaranteed employment.
No, well, even though all of those things are happening, we're still making our voice be heard. And so with each of these issues, we have opportunities along the way to ensure positive aging. So for example, right now we're working on looking at adult day regulations. Tracey and I are working with adult days in our membership. We're going through the regulations line by line and seeing, what needs to be changed, what's a technical change, what can improve quality of care, which is the most important. And so, it's exciting to be able to take something like that and have the opportunity to mold it and improve it.
Tracey, you're too new to be jaded. I mean, you have to be upbeat and positive, don't you?
Yes, and I am. I am so excited every day. I'll go home and I talk to my husband, and he doesn't understand a lot of what I'm talking about. But I am so excited because I see the possibilities, and I see how it can change. And I think that's one thing for me that, even though we can get you kind of bogged down by all the regulations and all of the things that happen that are negative that we wouldn't want to happen. There's still good things that happen. There's still good work that we're doing. There's still things that we can find that that we can be like, I was a part of that. I made that happen. Another part of it for me is I also think about the people in the care of the continuum, the older adults that are receiving these services. I think about their day-to-day, how it impacts them, and how, that we're a voice for them when they don't necessarily have one because they haven't been given that chance. So that's what excites me, is that I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for a lot of people who really need the support.
Absolutely. And so, advocacy is, our core business here at Leading Age Virginia. It's what our members entrust us with. It's what they expect us to do, but we can't do it without them. And so, for our members who are listening, what's your ask of them? What do you want to say? Hey, member, this is what you need to be doing to support our efforts in Richmond and on Capitol Hill.
Yeah. Tracey?
Okay, yeah. Oh, I was going to go ahead and, speak to our Advocacy Champion campaign that Dana mentioned earlier, because I am taking that on, and it's, one of my main responsibilities, and I'm really happy to do it. So our Advocacy Champion campaign, that's where we ask all of our members to have one or maybe a couple advocacy champions in their community that would be our direct contact when we have anything come up advocacy wise. So, that could be asking them to get their legislators out for visits. That could be sending them action alerts or advocacy alerts about important legislation or bills that are coming up that their representatives need to hear their voices on. So I would say, when you see my email come across and I'm asking you to designate one for your community to, really engage in that conversation with me. So that's my big ask.
Excellent. Dana, what's your big ask?
Oh, I'd say do what Tracey said. I would say to use the tools that we've given from Leading Age Virginia and on a national level. I think that members sometimes think that it's harder than it is. And so we're here to do the legwork. We just want you to make the connections to establish someone in your community for us to work with and give them the tools that they need to have legislators come out. And we want you to go to Capitol Hill with us. The larger the group, the better. Walk with us. It's a busy day. It's a hard day. but it's a great way for you to connect on a federal level and on a state level. Have your legislators out and contact Tracey about getting an advocacy champion if you do not already have one.
Yeah. Also, when they get the emails from Leading Age about contact Congress, if they get the emails from you during the General Assembly to contact their legislators, click on those links. The letters are already written. You don't have to do anything except put in your name. Basically, it'll auto-populate if you're logged in. So those are the quickest and easiest ways to make an impact when we're trying to show our elected officials that there are issues that we actually care about and that are meaningful. So, I mean, there are small things that you can do with just a click, all the way to big things you can do, like going to Capitol Hill and things in between. You know, legislators love to come out to campuses so they can shake hands with constituents. And there are a lot of constituents in our member communities, a lot of voters that are living there and working there. And so I think that, I want to say thank you to both of you for, continuing to lead in this way. Dana for 20 years and Tracey coming in fresh to support, all the good work that Dana's doing. I think, it's nice to know that we have got a strong reputation both here in Richmond and on Capitol Hill because of the great work that we've done for so long. But we need our members and others, and that could be residents and staff and family members and boards, have their boards of directors get involved, like, any which way they want, right?
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that. We've set the framework for it, but it can be any way the community wants it to be. You do not have to do it a specific way. If you want to have your residents involved, you want to have a town hall, you want to just have someone come out and tour, we can give you all the tools that you need. And so we have a lot of education that needs to happen with this turnover at the General Assembly. So please, reach out.
Yeah, and we like to show up from time to time too.
Yes, we do.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to say for our listeners to talk about why you love working in aging services, or just anything else that's on your mind as we wrap up today's podcast?
Well, I've appreciated the opportunity to do this today and to get this word out to our members about how important it is for them to also continue the advocacy work that we're doing.
Yeah, I would say I would, second what Dana just said, but then also to any, new or young professionals that we have listening, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to, grab a coffee, give you some advice if you have any questions and you just want to, kind of get your foot in the water with aging services. I'm here.
She's at Tracey at leadingagevirginia.org, more specifically.
Yeah.
Well, Tracey and Dana, thank you so much for joining me on Voices in Leadership today. It's always a pleasure to spend time with the both of you, and I know our listeners will benefit from our conversation. So thank you, and listeners, stay tuned for our next episode. Take care.